On Christmas Eve, 1945, a house in West Virginia burned to the ground. Inside were 10 members of the Sodder family. By morning, 5 of their children were gone. Not confirmed dead, gone. Investigators searched through the ashes, expecting to find bones, teeth, or any trace that the children had died in the fire. They found nothing, no remains, no clear evidence the children had ever been there. Then the details became stranger. The family's phone line had been cut. The ladder usually kept against the house had vanished. The 2 trucks George Sodder needed to rescue his children would not start. And more than 20 years later, the family received a photograph in the mail. On the back was a message that seemed impossible. It appeared to suggest one of the missing children was still alive. This is the mystery of the Sodder children, one of the most baffling unsolved disappearances in American history. The Sodders were a large Italian-American family living in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The father, George Sodder, had immigrated from Italy as a teenager and built a successful trucking business. He was known as hardworking, outspoken, and fiercely protective of his family. By 1945, George and his wife Jenny had 10 children. Their home sat on a hillside overlooking town. To most people, they appeared to be an ordinary family. But George had made enemies. He was openly critical of Benito Mussolini and the fascist government in Italy. In a community with many Italian immigrants, his political opinions often led to heated arguments. Months before the fire, a stranger visited the house offering to do work on the property. When George refused, the man reportedly pointed toward the roof and warned that the house would one day go up in flames. At the time, it sounded like an empty threat. Later, it would feel chillingly specific. Christmas Eve was quiet. The family exchanged gifts, talking late into the evening, and slowly began heading to bed. George and Jenny went upstairs. Some of the older children stayed awake a little longer. 5 of the younger children were believed to still be asleep in their upstairs rooms. Just after midnight, the phone rang. Jenny answered. A woman she did not recognize was asking for someone who did not live there. There was laughter in the background. The call felt strange, but she dismissed it as a wrong number. Before going back to sleep, she noticed the downstairs lights were still on and the curtains open. She turned off the lights, closed the curtains, and went upstairs. About half an hour later, she woke to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. George and Jenny rushed to wake the children. They managed to get several family members out through a window, but 5 of the younger children were believed to still be trapped inside. George tried to reach them. The stairway was already engulfed. He tried to break through a window and badly injured his arm. Then he ran outside, planning to use one of his work trucks to climb to an upper window. Neither truck would start, though the family insisted both had been working normally the day before. Desperate, he searched for the ladder usually kept against the house. It was gone. The family tried calling the fire department. No one answered. A neighbor eventually reached the operator, but the fire department did not arrive until the next morning. By then, the house had collapsed into ash. The official explanation came quickly. The 5 missing children had died in the fire. The case should have ended there. It did not. When investigators sifted through the ruins, they expected to find remains. Even in intense house fires, human bones and teeth usually leave some evidence behind. But the search uncovered nothing belonging to the children. No bones, no teeth, nothing. Officials claimed the fire had simply been hot enough to completely cremate their bodies. The family refused to believe it. Later, experts questioned whether a normal house fire burning for less than an hour could have reduced 5 bodies to nothing. Then came the other inconsistencies. A telephone repairman later discovered the family's phone line had not burned through. It had been physically cut. A witness later claimed to have seen a man stealing the family's ladder that night. Another reported seeing a car near the property during the fire. In the days that followed, several people claimed to have seen children matching the missing siblings traveling with unfamiliar adults. One woman said she had served breakfast to a group of children, and 2 men and 2 women at a roadside hotel the morning after the fire. She said the adults refused to let the children speak. No lead was ever confirmed, but George and Jenny became convinced their children had survived. They believed they had been abducted. For the rest of their lives, they searched for answers. They erected a giant billboard along Route 16, displaying photographs of the missing children and offering a reward for information. It stood for decades, a permanent question hanging over West Virginia. Then, in 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny received an envelope postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photograph of a man in his 20s. On the back was a handwritten message. "Louis Sodder, I love Brother Frankie." The rest of the note was cryptic and partially illegible. The man in the photograph bore a striking resemblance to Louis, one of the missing boys. The family was shaken. George had hired a private investigator to track the lead. The investigator never reported back. The trail went cold. Theories multiplied. Some believed the children had died in the fire and the missing remains were the result of an investigative mistake. Others believed the children were kidnapped as part of a revenge plot connected to George's political disputes. Some theories suggest involvement by criminal networks. Others believe at least one child survived and lived under another identity. There are still questions that remain unanswered. Why was the phone line cut? Why was the ladder moved? Why would both trucks fail at the exact moment George needed them? Why were there no remains? Who sent that photograph? The official cause of the fire was faulty wiring, but the family challenged this immediately. They pointed out that the home's lights had still been working during the early stages of the fire. Later, some investigators suggested the possibility of an incendiary device. Nothing was ever conclusively proven. George and Jenny never accepted the official explanation. Jenny wore black for the rest of her life. She kept the memory of her missing children alive for decades. The billboard remained standing long after George died, a silent appeal to anyone who might know the truth. Nearly 80 years later, the mystery remains unsolved. Did 5 children perish in a tragic Christmas fire, or were they taken into the darkness while their family watched helplessly? Some mysteries fade because the evidence disappears. The Sodder case endures because the evidence never fully made sense. And somewhere, inside that contradiction, the truth may still be waiting.